So welcome back to America's Founding Up Close and Personal. This lesson is about civics versus politics, but as we go there, we're going to take a look at the four structures of healthy society. Well, as the Declaration told us so many lessons ago, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So as we look at those God-given rights, we quickly discover this. God is the one that grants these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to individuals. The other thing that we've learned in this lesson so far is that government's role is to protect those God-given rights. God grants the rights, civil government protects those rights. But did you know those individual rights and civil rights actually fit into four larger structures of society? There are four areas of life that when they're operating in their areas of competency, an individual experiences maximum liberty and freedom, and society experiences its maximum health. In a healthy society, each area of life has its own distinct responsibilities, authority, and competence, and stands equal to other areas of life. The Pilgrims of 1620 mastered this knowledge. It was the Reformation period, and a century had taken place where Christians were going back to study the Bible for themselves. They were applying this verse in Romans 12:2, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And as they renewed their mind and studied the scriptures, these four structures of society began to percolate to the surface. And from England, via Holland, they brought those ideas, those seed ideas here to the Plymouth colony. What were those ideas? That individuals are one of God's institution of government here on earth. Individuals are called to self-responsibility and self-government. That family was another institution that God directed his governance toward on earth. Those ingredients included love, care, provision, children, education, and a legacy. And then as we've studied so far, civil government, which was designed for protection and for justice. And then the church. The church has a role to provide outreach, discipleship, and accountability. Now we're going to move through each of these and discover them one-on-one, because when each of these are held in balance and in harmony, maximum individual freedom and liberty exist. Let's take a look at individuals and our responsibility for self-government. Self-responsibility includes to develop the skills and the abilities and the talents that God has given us to overcome obstacles in life, to grow and mature, but also to be steward over whatever financial and environmental resources God grants us. Self-government includes the 10 Commandments as a governing rule of life. In fact, James Madison said this, "We stake the whole future of American civilization not on the power of government, but on the capacity of each and every one of us to govern ourselves according to the 10 Commandments of God." Well, self-government is even highlighted by this proverb. It says, "A person without self-control is like a city with broken down walls," Proverbs 25:28. So what are those 10 Commandments to refresh our minds? Those 10 Commandments include the first 5 and 6 dealing with our relationship with God. No other gods before me, no idols. Do not use the Lord's name in vain. Remember the Sabbath and honor our mother and father. Notably, however, the rest of the 10 Commandments form our civil law. Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false witness, and do not covet. Those 10 Commandments form the basis of American jurisprudence, and they serve as guidelines for life. But you know, the practicing Christian or the Christian of faith even has something superior to the 10 Commandments. The fruits of the Spirit are these: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And the fruits of the Spirit conclude with this profound statement: against such things there is no law. And so what the scriptures are telling us is that the 10 Commandments are like guardrails for life. When we're walking in the fruits of the Spirit and the Spirit of God fills us, we are self-governing individuals. We can be on the road of life, and like guardrails, the Ten Commandments fade off the screen from our view, and we enjoy the godly life, the Christian life that God has called us to. And so the fruits of the Spirit and self-governing Christians form a key basis for the American system, the individual. Well, what's the second entity that God has dispensed his authority here on earth? It's families. In families, God has very much important things intended in mind: the love, care, and provision of children, education, and the legacy. The husband and wife. You know, the formation of the family is something that 90% of never married adults still want to experience with one person for the course of their entire lifetime. And we don't hear that statistic very much anymore. The overall goal for God and his plan here on earth is healthy marriages. That is, the husband and wife practicing unconditional love with one another. That they grow and mature and persevere. That they work together to provide food and warmth and shelter for their children and their family. They provide emotional and physical and sexual needs for one another. They care for others. They care for the needs of the poor and the prisoner and the elderly. And if they have children, they nurture those children, and they help those children become self-governing citizens themselves. And they pass on this legacy of freedom and liberty through their offspring. The most proven statistic in sociology is this: that a healthy children that are raised in two-parent homes with a husband and wife are the most prosperous emotionally, economically, in society at large. And so God has big plans and big purposes for the institution of the family, and the civil government ought to protect that institution. Well, the government, as we've discovered through the course of this curriculum, has a specific role. But the unique thing is, as Lawrence Reed reflects on this fact, the most profound political and philosophical trend of our time is a serious erosion of consensus about what government is supposed to do and what it's not supposed to do. Many people think that government exists to do anything for anybody, anytime they ask for it. Government's actual role is simple: to protect freedom and liberty. So the Bible says this as a profound truth: for rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from the fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and he will commend you. In this very simple Bible passage in Romans 13 that's also echoed in 1 Peter and other passages, we learn this biblical purpose for government, and it's quite simple. The biblical purpose for civil government is simply to restrain evil and to encourage good, to restrain evil and to allow good to flourish. And so in this role, civil government protects and provides justice. It protects the citizens internationally and domestically. It provides for a fair system of justice, but it encourages good, but does not do good works itself. It recognizes that liberty and freedom are from God and not from the state. And so very specifically in God's institutions that he has formed here on earth, this is the role for civil government. And then finally, this fourth institution, the church. The church is to outreach with the message of Christ, to reach others with that profound truth that Christ died for our sins and provides salvation for the world. Outreach, discipleship, and accountability. To create a community of families that love and care for one another and for the poor. That they care for the poor and the prisoner and the widow and the orphan. Remarkably, this truth is astounding when you hear it, but the church was behind all of these social movements of the last century. The abolitionist movements, the prison reforms, the child labor laws, women's rights, inner-city missions, hospitals, education, and more. In fact, in the 1830s, the caring network of societies that came out of the church became known as the Benevolent Empire. And its total annual income was as big as the entire budget for the federal government. That is a profound thing. My, have things changed today. So the church's role is not to lord over these other three entities, but to challenge individuals to self-responsibility, to eternity, to accountability, to self-government. To challenge the family to love, respect, to persevere, to share in the love of God with others, to raise the children, and to challenge the state that the state is not God and should not pretend to be so. And so those are the four institutions that, when are operating in balance in their respective spheres, society is healthy. But what happens when those four institutions fall into decay? In this case, the civil government begins to overwhelm the other entities, and it begins to assert itself in those other God-designed areas. Well, profound things begin to happen. First of all the isms of expanding government follow this path. Socialism, communism, Marxism, secular humanism, totalitarianism, dictatorship, and tyranny. What happens in each of these entities is the civil government redirects and disposes of God's ordained purpose for those entities. In the individual life, the government rescues people from irresponsibility. The welfare laws that remove responsibility from the father take hold, and tax law that removes the person's ability to care and steward for their financial resources takes hold. And the legal system that values tolerance and other values and diminishes the idea of personal values and self-government. And then lastly, this whole idea that there's an ever-increasing set of laws that govern a person's behavior, and so they're no longer living free. In the family, it redefines what family is. It redefines gender and sexuality. It taxes the family. It creates easy divorce law. It endorses sex outside of marriage. The care for the poor and the needy are taken over by the civil government, and the civil government educates according to government values, but not the family's values. In the realm of the church, the government asserts itself and says the state wants power. The state wants to take care of the poor, and it usurps the church's role in doing that. The state does not want to be told right from wrong, and so it dictates to the church that people of faith are to keep their faith private rather than express the freedom of religion that God has granted them. The last dimension of this is, in fact, that the state fosters evil under the guise of free speech. It takes over good works and fights those who are doing good works, and the state becomes God. What do people of faith want to see? What do people of faith know should be true? As the church, in its role, should challenge the state that it's not God and that its laws must be moral and just. And so these are these four institutions that, when God dispenses his authority into these institutions and they stay within the boundaries of their various jurisdictions, society flourishes and finds its full health. Now, as we take these four institutions and look at everything that we've learned to this point, it becomes profound to take a look at civics versus politics as applied to these societal structures. Let me explore this for a minute. Civics versus politics. Our language has become so muddled in this day and age that our ability to use words to define what we're talking about has become a hindrance to effective civics educations. So what is civics versus politics? Well, civics is the study of rights and duties of citizenship, the study of government with an attention to the role of the citizen. It's relating to humans as members of society and civil affairs. It's relating to or derived from a city or citizen. So as you look at this list, you see a lot of things related to civics being citizens, civil affairs. Politics, in contrast, is like this. Politics is the study of political units, opinions on political questions, social relations involving intrigue, gain, political power. The understanding how government bureaucracy works in order to gain power and use government bureaucracy to further political aims. The gaining of political power or advantage. Are you seeing that recurring theme in there of power, power, power? And so in a digested form, what you can learn is that civics is what is the purpose of civil government. That's civics' most profound question, whereas politics' most profound question is, how can I get power? How do these relate to the four structures of society? Very profoundly. Civics is about protecting these four institutions. Politics is about how government can infiltrate and take over those institutions as we're experiencing it in modern America. Well, clarifying lists have helped me to kind of further digest these dichotomies of differences. Civics deals with words and synonyms such as this: society, structures, areas of responsibility, stability, character, competency, freedom, liberty, the nature of God, and even the nature of man. and principles. The list on politics side has to do with people, personalities, persona, crafted media image, parties, programs, propaganda, power, privilege, pandering, pushiness, a lot of P's on that list, and a lot of things that deal with power. As you look at these two lists and you look at the heading of civics and politics, you can actually fade those headings away and you can come up with two new profound truths. On the civics side, you can see that people that are really interested in civics and citizenship are really the statesmen in our time and period. And politics becomes those that are politicians that are seeking office. Let's explore this a little bit further as we wrap up. Let's look at this as a statesman perspective and a statesman's list. A statesman or statesperson serves others. They have high moral character. They have a moral code of right and wrong that they're embedded with, most often from a faith perspective. They're patriots. They vote for the best interest of those they represent. They are citizen representatives, and they feel accountable to God for future generations in their own behavior in office. Politicians typically serve the party. Characters formed by the party. A code that fits the narrative is what they're after, and it's party first and country second. They vote for the best interest of their political party. They're professional politicians, and they're only looking out for themselves. That's the worst case scenario, and unfortunately, many times people like this find their way into public office. One last reflection on these two headings. A statesman or statesperson looks out for the common welfare, the good of the state and the country. On the category of power, they know that the people are the one that have given them their power to be elected officials, and they govern at the consent of the governed. They realize that we're a constitutional republic where there's a majority rule, but with minority protections. Therefore, we the people. And civics is about the rights and roles of citizens. Politicians too often view common welfare as a direct way that government can control citizens by producing payments to those citizens. Power becomes what the politician tells the people what they can have. Democracy is what the word set is that they more often use because they have no interest in a constitutional republic. They just want to have mob rule and the majority run over any minority opinion. It's we the party, and political science becomes the study of government. So as we work toward the end of this course and as we look toward future actions that we can be involved in, the idea of cultivating and developing statesmen and stateswomen become a profound part of what we're about. Civics and the role of the church as we wrap up. The Creator has authority over all. Abraham Kuyper, theologian and writer, said this: "There's not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry mine." You see, there's nothing in all of creation that God does not have authority to speak on. The moral issues of the day have become political issues only because politicians have declared them so. The church has allowed political leaders, the education establishment, and the media to redefine moral issues as political issues. Then once something is labeled as political, the church is scolded, maligned, or worse, for even commenting on it. Then it is demanded that the church stay silent. This is wrong. The church has a calling to teach biblical civics and Christian citizenship, and to reflect on these categories of what civics and citizenship actually mean. You see, there's nothing in all of creation that God does not have the authority to speak on. My name's Craig Seibert, and I'm the director of ChristianCitizenshipTraining.org. Thanks for being with us.